What is up, guys? Welcome back. I'm Kevin Crates. This is the channel where we go over a bit of crypto news followed by 5 charts every day. Today we're looking at Bitcoin, Ethereum, EGLD, HNT, and AXS. And as always, if you're just here for a specific chart, timestamps are down in the description below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn that bell on to catch notifications for all daily uploads. Another brutal 24 hours in the crypto markets, but if you're not new here, you were not caught off guard. We've talked about these price targets for weeks. Bitcoin hitting the low 29,000s, Ethereum hitting the low 1700s, working its way back up now, but these are not strong bounces, which gives us indication that the market is most likely trending lower. The entire crypto market is just in the red and bleeding out at the moment. Surprisingly enough, there are a couple shout outs on today's overview. FTX token, we've talked about this quite a bit on this channel, up around 5% today. And another one that is having a bit of a decent pump today is Quant, up around 10%. Quant is an extremely interesting project that we're going to circle back to and talk about in more detail in a future video. FTX, the exchange we talk about, is exponential growth all the time on this channel, but not to mention its token is definitely one to keep an eye on. But overall, the market looks rough, and I know some of you guys might be down a lot of money today, and I just want you guys to keep in mind that there is still so much money to be made in this market. I'm not going to sell you this hopium of just buy the dip and dollar cost average, we're going back up. No, you got to be smarter than that. The game has changed. This is not the same bull market it was back in January, February. This is a new game. You got to come in with a new approach. There is still so much money on the table to be made, but you gotta change your game, you gotta change your approach, and you gotta adapt. But overall, guys, the market looks rough. Jumping into today's headlines, we have FTX making news as always. Crypto exchange FTX valued at $18 billion in funding round. The article says cryptocurrency exchange FTX has raised money at an $18 billion valuation, a deal that shows investors' enthusiasm for digital currencies even after a crash that erased half of Bitcoin's value over the past 3 months. The article goes on to list some of the massive investors getting involved in FTX. Not to mention some of the huge deals they've closed. Earlier this year, the company notched a $135 million 19-year deal to buy the naming rights to the home of the Miami Heat. The stadium is now called FTX Arena. And there's so many other deals that FTX is involved in that we've talked about on this channel before. But the bottom line is, as far as competitors go to Binance, FTX is definitely one that cannot be ignored. We had some crypto news out of France. The French government pushes for one agency to regulate crypto across the European Union. The government of France has proposed the European Securities and Market Authority, or the ESMA, should regulate digital currency activity across the European Union. If enacted, this would establish a single authority over the crypto sector across the trading bloc and would create uniform regulations across the union. We also had this related article. New European Union proposal looks to tighten regulations for sending cryptocurrency. The European Commission has submitted a new proposal that will require crypto asset service providers to collect additional anti-money laundering information from those who utilize cryptocurrency for money transfers. Under this proposal, service providers conducting transfers must have the name of the originator of the transfer, the account number, where the account exists, and where it is used to process the transaction. And these additional requirements would kick in when a transfer exceeds 1,000 euros. And in my opinion, both of these articles are great news. Regulations in the short term may have a bit of a negative effect, but in the long term, they help legitimize and strengthen the entire crypto space. We had MasterCard in the news again. MasterCard says it's working to simplify crypto conversions on its payment card offering. The fintech giant said new capabilities will make it easier for crypto providers to convert digital currency to traditional fiat currency. Working with a series of partners, MasterCard said it will begin testing the ability for banks and crypto companies to offer a card option for people wanting to spend digital currencies anywhere MasterCard is accepted. And we see articles like this every day from MasterCard and Visa. They seem completely committed to adopting cryptocurrencies into their ecosystem, and that is great to see. And we had Dogecoin making news again. Grooming products firm AXS releases limited edition crypto-scented Doge body spray. Around 1,000 lucky Americans entered a giveaway of a limited edition Dogecoin-themed body spray called the Doge Can. Doge Can product allegedly contains a crypto scent which lasts up to 48 hours. And here's a tweet and an image of the Doge Can body spray from AXS. I don't have much to say about this. I think it's a fun idea. I don't think I would personally ever use the Doge Can, but I pass the question off to you guys. Let me know down in the comments. Would you ever use the Doge Can, or is there a different cryptocurrency body spray that you'd like to see and use? Looking at Bitcoin's daily chart, let's zoom in here and turn our notes on from the other day. You can see the stochastic RSI is extremely low on the daily, the 4 hour, and all the way to the 3 hour. However, the 2 hour and 1 hour are extremely high. So that does show me some indication that there might be a bit more consolidation in this lower range and a possible push just to one leg lower. Because if we jump to the 15-minute chart here, you can see here, although this is just going one leg down, the second leg down looked pretty strong. So I'd imagine there might be one more short leg down, maybe just a wick towards into the 28,000s. I don't think it's going to go that deep into the 28,000s, but you never know with Bitcoin. If you look here on the 1-minute chart, it's doing exactly what it did yesterday, where it tried to kind of fight against this 200 EMA, claim it, failed, tried to push for the resistance around 31,000, pushed up there for a moment before taking a quick drop to the lower 29,000 range, where it's trying to climb back up now. I would not be surprised if all of this is just consolidation, just like all of this was. So if we come here to the 1-hour chart, I would not be too surprised to see it kind of do one more possible wick down, maybe the low 29,000s, maybe just touching 28.9. I don't think it's going to get all the way down here right now. That is possible though. I think there's going to be at least one more push up, maybe kind of fight this resistance around 30.5K before going down for one more leg towards 28,000. We're going to jump over to the Ichimoku chart for a sec. Looking at Bitcoin's daily Ichimoku chart, let's turn our notes on. I deleted a lot of our original notes. If you guys want to go back in old videos, you can always look through those, but I don't see the point of having all of that mess on the screen anymore. Rejected the Kumo cloud there, rejected the Kumo cloud there. 31.9 seems to be a resistance that it might come up to, so around 32,000 is a possibility on the daily. Let's look at the 4-hour chart and see what's going on. Yeah, so if we grab a price target right here and put that around there, so 30.5, which is what we just talked about on the other chart, would be a resistance level that I could see it pushing back up to. But overall, this is a very bearish setup. The conversion line and baseline are pretty close, and this cloud isn't as thick, but it seems to still be a little thick. Let's look at the 1-hour chart. It's thick around there too. This is still a very bearish setup. I'd imagine there's possibly one more leg down. It might kind of push up in this direction, which would lead it to around 30.5, which is what we've been talking about on the other chart as well. So it would come around here, hit that price target, and then it would go down for one more leg. If it manages to get above there, you know, it could push towards 32,000, but I would not expect that to happen with the state of the market, because if we jump over to the 1-week chart, let's turn our notes off for a sec. We've been talking about this for a few weeks now. This is a very bearish setup on the weekly. Baseline is well above the conversion line. They've already crossed back here. Lagging span is about to cross through. I don't think it's going to drop through just yet, but if we take a look at price targets, I think there still could be a little bit lower, and that is why I'm talking about a leg down. I think it could come around, just around, let's put it nice and close to the Kumo cloud there. So around 28,000, I still think is possible. Maybe just a little tap of 28,000 before pushing back up. I don't think these higher price targets, I mean, this, let me just delete that for a sec. This conversion line is going to come through. Let me delete that price target. Sorry, guys. This conversion line is going to come through, which again would be around 34,000. So we've talked about a possible jump to around 34,000 as prices push towards 28,000, which I think is still possible. Somewhere around 33,000 could be a jumping point, but that's not a guarantee, because down here is 22,000, and you're hearing more and more people start talking about that price. And we've been talking about it here for a while, that if it enters the Kumo cloud, 22,000 is a possibility, and below that is even possible. But this is a bearish setup. It's pretty much headed towards the Kumo cloud without any doubt at this point. But as far as price targets, I would start watching this 27.9, 28K range. But if that is lost, I would start watching this 22.6, 22.5 range. This is a very bearish setup. This does not look good for Bitcoin, but it is possible that it hits this 28,000, bounces up to around 34,000, and then continues its way, maybe somewhere around here, around 28,000 again. So 28,000 could be a possible bottom, but as far as I'm concerned, with this setup, it's going to have to go through the Kumo cloud at some point. So prices could drop to around 22,000 in the coming weeks. But for the time being, I would look for a possible bounce around 28,000. So my price targets for the short term around 28,000, possible resistance around 30,000.5, possible jump to around 34K, and on the low end, I'd watch for around 22,000. Looking at Ethereum's daily chart, let's turn our notes on from before. And did we nail this or what, guys? Look at this. I know it's a mess, but you can kind of see it. Hit our first price target of around 1900, somewhere in here, up here, and then it came down to around this price target of 1763, but 1725 is what I tweeted as well, that it was going to come down to this line here. So as far as price targets, they've all been hit for Ethereum. So where is Ethereum going? Let me just delete some of this mess now that all of this is over. Ethereum does have the London hard fork coming up, so we have to take that into account as far as price action goes. That is about just a little over 2 weeks away now. So as far as price targets go, A lot of different things could happen with Ethereum in this setup. There could be a possible pushback, and it would have to reclaim the 200 EMA. So at this point, it would have to get back above. Sorry about all this mess, guys. I'll get this cleaned up before the next video. It's going to have to push back above 2,000 on the 200 EMA. If I turn all these notes off, you can see it right here. So it's going to have to get back above there for things to get bullish. There is always the possibility, as the London hard fork approaches, Ethereum ramps up and starts to carry the market again. So we have to keep that in mind, which is when we could also see the bounce from Bitcoin from 28,000 up to 34,000. All of that could make sense. But my price targets for Ethereum, if things keep dipping, 15,000, we talked about that the other day. But if things get bullish for Ethereum, we got to see it get back above 2,000, build support, and then it can push up. On the last push leading up to the test nets, it only really made it to about 23,000, 2350. Not 23,000, sorry, 2,300 to 2,350. But as far as price targets for Ethereum, I'm going to need to watch it to see if it can get back above 2,000. If Ethereum can get back above 2,000, build support, it can make a push. If not, and Bitcoin keeps dipping, I'd start looking for this lower price target of 1,500. And again, guys, if it hits 1,500, 1,000 is possible in the coming weeks as well. So what happens with the markets is kind of dictated over the next 2 weeks leading to the London hard fork. Let's take a quick look at the Ichimoku chart. Looking at Ethereum's daily Ichimoku chart, let's turn our notes on from before and zoom in here. So as you can see, it moved exactly how we talked about. Hit our first price target, done. Hit our second price target, 1725. That's done too now. So if we look at our 4-hour chart, let's see what's going to happen here. I'm looking at this now as possible resistance. As Bitcoin pushes back up towards 30.5, I'd look for Ethereum to push back up to 1850. In terms of can it keep pushing up from there, all depends on what happens leading up to the London hard fork, which is not that far away now. So as far as price targets for Ethereum, I'm still going to be watching this lower one we talked about yesterday, 1550. If Bitcoin goes lower, that is where Ethereum is most likely headed. Below that, 1,000, but we're going to leave that out of the conversation for now because, again, London hard fork is coming up, and that is going to be a big game changer potentially. Because if we look at the weekly chart, Ethereum does not look as bad as Bitcoin. Could it drop down to around 1,100? Yes. Could it go down to 1,050? Also yes. But this still is a decent setup, and it all depends on what happens leading up to the London hard fork. If the London hard fork has no effect, then yes, prices are going to trend lower as Bitcoin drops. But leading up to that, I kind of watch for Ethereum to push back above 2,000. If it can gain support there, great. It can make a push. But as far as price targets, I'd watch for this current one of 1850 as a potential resistance and see what happens from there. So my current price targets for Ethereum, 1850 resistance on the higher end and 1,500 on the lower end. Looking at Elron Gold, EGLD, let's turn our notes on from the last time we talked about this. And as you can see, our price targets have been hit. Again, this one around here, we talked about it getting hit around $70, which is where it's hanging out right now. As far as price targets from there, I'm going to be looking for this one around 56.15. And we're going to jump straight to the Ichimoku chart so I can show you why. Looking at EGLD's daily Ichimoku chart, let's turn our notes on from last time, and there's a reason that we're revisiting this, and that is because last time we talked about how heavy of the resistance was up against this cloud, but it had just reached this area, and it was going to be interesting to see if it could punch through, which it did not. Not only did it run into resistance here, it ran into resistance there, and it's running into resistance again right here around $73. So as far as price targets go, I'm going to be looking for Elron to drop a little bit lower to these low 50s. Does that mean that it can't go up in the future? Obviously not. You can see here the cloud is trying to switch into a different trend, but it is still in a bit of a downtrend. It may be able to push up. If it can get above around 75, that would be interesting, but I would imagine it's going to get rejected around there. So as far as resistance goes, 75.42 is going to be a major resistance. If you can get above there, claim it, build support, that's great. Stochastic RSI is low on the daily, but it's also high on the 4 hour. So I'd imagine prices are going to trend lower as Bitcoin trends lower. Low price targets, I'm going to be looking between $50 to $55 for EGLD, but as far as resistance goes, you're going to want to watch that 75.42 range. So $50 to $55 on the lower range, 75 to 70.52 on the higher range. Looking at HNT Helium's daily chart, you can see here before we turn our notes on that it's still hanging above the 200 EMA. So it is still a slightly bullish chart in the market compared to some other ones. But as far as price targets go, it is hanging around this $10 to around 9.5 range, which is just where the 200 EMA is. If it dips below there, I'd start watching for these low 8.1s, maybe around 8.2, somewhere between 8.1 to 8.5 as a potential target for HNT. You can see on these low wicks 8.5. So yeah, that makes sense. Let's jump over to the Ichimoku chart. Looking at HNT's daily Ichimoku chart, you see a lot of resistance in this cloud. And if we turn our notes on, there's some interesting stuff going on. The stochastic RSI is extremely low on the daily and the 4-hour, but it is sky high on the hourly as well as the 2-hour. So I'd imagine prices are going to run into these targets. Around 10.5, somewhere in there is going to be a pretty major resistance for HNT. It's important that it gets above there if it wants to push higher. As far as this price target here, it's already pushed above that. So I'd imagine somewhere in the next few hours, it is possible for it to push to around 10.5 as Bitcoin starts to climb. But again, all of this is dictated around Bitcoin. You can see this is already trying to push up towards that price target. Let's look at the 1 hour and see a closer view of what's going on. So you can see it's already gotten above the conversion line and baseline are crossing. Lagging span is trying to get through. So pretty much by the time you guys are watching this, it is possible that HNT is already pushed back up to around 10.4, 10.5 on the hourly as well as 2-hour. But the stochastic RSI is just too high. So as far as Bitcoin, it's all dictated on what Bitcoin does, really. I start looking out for these lower price targets, but those are the resistance targets that I would watch in the short term. So as far as resistance goes, I'd imagine somewhere around 10.5 is where HNT is going to get capped off. If it manages to get above there, it could make a push towards somewhere around 11.5. So it all depends on if Bitcoin can keep climbing, but 10.5 is going to be the first major resistance. And if prices trend back down lower, I'd start watching for this range around 8.3 to 8.5 for HNT. Looking at AXS's daily chart, Axie Infinity, let's turn our notes on before, and you can see it's pretty much moving exactly how we talked about. I think we talked about these lower price targets on the Ichimoku chart, but we said that this would be a area of a pullback that I could still see it taking off from. Stochastic RSI is still so low on the daily. It's also low on the 4-hour. Let's take a look at the 1 hour. 1 hour is high like the rest of the market, so there could be some consolidation, maybe a slight dip. Let's look at the Ichimoku chart real quick. Looking at AXS's daily Ichimoku chart, if we turn our notes on from before, we can see it moved pretty much exactly how we talked about and landed almost directly on our price target. And we can see here on the 4-hour of why we set that price target. We talked about this area here. Let me delete this so it's a little bit easier for you guys to see. It didn't quite go as low as this price target of around, what was this, around $14, $13.7, but it is starting to trend its way back up. But that high RSI on the, or stochastic RSI on the 1 hour does give some indication that this price target still could be hit. If Bitcoin starts to dip lower, it is possible for Axie to kind of dip to around $13.7, $14. I would say it would be a more safe target to keep an eye out for. Somewhere around $13.9 to $14 is still possible for an Axie pullback. But this is still, let me turn all of this off, still in my opinion a very bullish looking chart. If these lines cross, that might be a different story, but for the time being, I still think Axie Infinity is not done. This pullback had to happen. This kind of move, it's just too intense. It can't just keep going. Just like Bitcoin, guys. You guys wonder if we're in a bull market, a bear market. Bitcoin had a massive run. These pullbacks have to happen. It's just part of the way that the market flows. So as far as Axie goes, I don't think this is over. I think this could be a good bouncing point around $14 for Axie Infinity. We'd have to keep an eye on it in the coming days to see how that plays out. But I still think Axie Infinity might pull back a little bit to around $14. As far as resistance goes, I kind of keep an eye out for these higher price targets we talked about, around $17 to $20. Right now, the price target's a little bit lower since this baseline's come down. So I'd keep an eye closer to around 18.3 as a major resistance for Axie. If Bitcoin starts to trend back up towards 30.5, this price target of around 18.3 could be hit, where prices may trend back down lower. So as far as major resistance goes for the time being, keep my eye out for around 18.3, 18.5. But as far as support goes, there may be this pullback towards $14 for AXS. So price targets on the low end, $14. Price targets on the high end, 18.5. All right, folks, that's all for today. If there's any charts you want to look at in the future, leave it down in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and turn that bell on so you get those notifications. If you're not following me on Twitter, KevinCrates_ on Twitter. I'm extremely active on there. Anytime you tweet at me, I will always tweet back at you. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. I'm out.